UK Cinema History, Season 2, Episode 12, Dr. Zhivago, directed by David Blume. Hello and welcome to UK Cinema History. This week we're doing Dr. Zhivago from 1965, directed by David Lean, based on the novel by Boris Pasternak, starring Omar Sharif, Julia Christie, Tom Courtney, and hello Yazzie, and she's on the phone. Everybody be quiet. Oh wait, everybody's not here yet. Just waiting for our other co-host to show up. Let me give Yazzie some mod power here, and hello, hi, this is your selection. So in the fashion that we started over in the Understanding Movies, that we usually just say let the person who chose the movie kind of run the show. So I'm just going to kind of turn things over to you and let you do the intro while I ping some people into this room. And welcome Sila, welcome Yelena, and welcome Kathy.
Good afternoon to everyone.
And yeah, thank you, Eric. Thank you for deciding to go with this film. Hello to Yasi and Sila and Yelena, Kathy, and grateful for everyone who's here. And hopefully we'll get some more people coming in as the room rolls along. So this is, of course, one of the most famous films ever made. And I feel it's worth some consideration. This was actually recommended to me by Ruby, who I'm hoping will join us, and I was really taken by it. I'd never seen it, and it's an amazing piece of work. So I'm excited for us to talk about it today. A number of people. I'm just going to go right in and start talking about some behind the scenes details of how it got made. And I'll stop. I won't cover everything. I won't cover all my notes, but I'll cover some stuff, and then I can do more later. So a number of people and studios bid for the rights to the novel by Boris Pasternak, including Stanley Kubrick and Kirk Douglas. Producer Carlo Ponti ended up with the rights in 1963, and he wanted Dr. Zhivago to be as grand as Lawrence of Arabia. So he recruited the key makers of Lawrence of Arabia, David Lean, screenwriter Robert Bolt, cinematographer Freddie Young, production designer John Box, and composer Maurice Jarre. And David Lean also brought from Lawrence of Arabia actors Omar Sharif and Alec Guinness. Now, producer Carlo Ponti bought the rights in part because he wanted to cast his wife, Sophia Loren, in the role of Laura. But David Lean said that Loren was too tall for the role, so he for some reason didn't want to cast her for that. And Yvette Mimieux was also rejected for the part of Laura. Jane Fonda was someone that David Lean did want, and he offered it to her, but Jane Fonda turned it down, mostly because she didn't want to go to Spain for the scheduled 9 months, which ended up being a year. And a number of other people also turned it down for that reason, because of a long production schedule. Several weeks later, Fonda changed her mind and told her agent she wanted to do it, but by then David Lean had cast Julie Christie and had signed her. In 2014, Fonda said that of all the movies she turned down, this is the one she most regrets not saying yes to. Um, Lean cast Julie Christie after seeing her in Billy Liar, and also on the recommendation, excuse me, also on the recommendation of John Ford, who directed her in Young Cassidy. Um, Geraldine Chaplin, who plays Tanya, happened because David Lean spotted her on the cover of a magazine. She was modeling at the time. And Lean's first choice for Yuri Zhivago was Peter O'Toole, who of course starred in Lawrence of Arabia. And O'Toole turned him down, which created a rift between the two of them, but never fully healed. MGM suggested for Zhivago Paul Newman, which was like crazy. And their nuts reasoning was that Boris Pasternak, the book's author, had been awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. And Newman, Newman had recently played a Nobel Prize winner in an MGM movie, the comedy thriller The Prize. David Lean responded by saying he wanted Max von Sydow. MGM refused to give him that actor and instead put forward Burt Lancaster. Screenwriter Robert Bolt said no to Lancaster. Um, Sean Connery was also considered, and Dick Bogard was considered, but they were never actually offered the part. And in his autobiography, Michael Caine said he'd read for Yuri Zhivago, but after watching the results with David Lean, Michael Caine suggested Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif asked David Lean to consider him for the role of Pasha, and he was shocked when Lean offered him the title role. So that's the kind of an interesting, I mean, to me anyway, story about the casting and how Hollywood works sometimes. Um, so I have a lot more to say about behind the scenes stuff, but I will stop there and um, I'm going to turn it over to Eric for his comments, and then let's see, Peter order, and then Sila and Kathy.
Thanks, Hi, and thanks for suggesting this film. We had gotten numerous requests to do Lawrence of Arabia, and my response time and time again is, what else is there to say about Lawrence of Arabia? And
Which didn't stop you from okaying Rashomon for tomorrow. I just wanted to point that out.
well, I think there's a difference between Rashomon and Lawrence of Arabia, quite honestly, because but we'll get into that tomorrow. But no, but I'm gonna be honest and say I like this film more than I like Lawrence of Arabia. The war scenes, the battle scenes in Lawrence of Arabia bore me. I'm just gonna be honest. I never felt bored during Dr. Zhivago during however many times that I've seen it. There are parts of this film that perhaps would be trimmed today. It's kind of got an older fashioned pacing. There is a half an hour of where it literally feels like you're just watching Omar Sharif go from his wife's bed to Laura's bed to his wife's bed with inserts of flowers. That's done as a pastoral, but you know. It's never a boring film. It's never, oh look, the camels are going this way. Oh look, the camels are going this way. And I, watching it again with kind of almost an eye to, hey, what would I cut here? I don't have an answer. I don't. Having read Pasternak's novel, I actually feel like if I had to pick a flaw with this film, it's that that so much had to be cut out. To bring it down to this area, my favorite part of the Pasternak novel was the section after the Red Army defeats the Whites, when the Red Army turns on itself and starts persecuting its own members, and you get the whole scenario, which is kind of hinted at, but through dialogue with Tom Courtenay's character Pasha, who becomes the Red Army General Strelnikov, because of his earlier politics, becoming a target of the same army that he had led to burning down villages for something as simple as being next to a village that lent horses to the White Army, and that had to be cut. And my favorite scene in the novel had to be reduced to just a bit of dialogue, which is, of course, when Strelnikov is taken to be shot, and he tackles one of the guards, steals his gun, and blows his brains out in front of the firing squad. Own brains out in front of the firing squad, which is a great and dramatic scene, and so well written in the novel. And in the film, it's reduced to just something that Rod Steiger says to Yuri, just to Omar Sharif's Zhivago, just to bring us up to date on Strelnikov's character. But on the other hand, Robert Bolt's screenplay, I think, catches the essence of what the novel meant, while also completely changing Zhivago's character. And he did this before in his play, which was filmed a year later, A Man for All Seasons, where he took a historical character, in that case, Thomas More, and turned him into an existential hero in the mode of Camus' The Stranger. And he did that with Pasternak Zhivago, who was a person with a huge personality. Literally you could hear his laugh down the block and what have you, and turns him into kind of almost a cipher. And one of the things Lean told Sharif when he took this role was, if you get a lot of awards for Best Actor, then we have failed. Because I am attempting to create a cipher here, and that is Lean and Bolt, as a writer-director team, wanting to create this existential central character. That is to say, Zhivago is all about the self. So Zhivago is, to use Lean's phrase, a cipher in this. He is something that creates no action, but is reacted to. So when he goes through the October Revolution, and then after the October Revolution through the Russian Civil War, he is merely being swept up in events in this recreation, which is, again, Bolt recreating the novel to a modern Western existential audience, so he becomes that counterculture hero, the way that the existentialists did Sartre in No Exit, and Bolt, I think, succeeds mightily there, and Omar Sharif is almost perfect for this. So I think it's an absolutely lovely film, and I think it succeeds in what it does wonderfully. My other biggest flaw, of course, this is a film about a great poet that contains not one line of poetry, and having read the Pasternak novels, there was at least 44 pages of poems they could have picked. But I do understand that if one person in the audience said, that poem sucked, I guess it would lose believability for the idea of Zhivago being a great poet, so they decided not to go with that. but honestly, one of the most beautiful things in the novel is the wonderful use of poetry, and especially the final chapters, when they remember Zhivago, and they remember him through his poetry, is, I think, why that won the novel won the Nobel Prize, more than the fact that the CIA had kind of set it up to try and embarrass Russia, which is one of those overblown stories that gets told about this novel, was that melding of poetry and literature, which I think this film achieves. But the poetry, instead of being verbal, is visual, and I love that. Unlike Lawrence of Arabia, Lean gets away from the talking heads to deal with exposition, and really communicates visually things like the changing of the season. And he gets away from the kind of painted great big scenarios, when he was using, of course, 70 millimeter, and now he's gone down to 35 millimeter, but using the Panavision anamorphic lenses. And so you get wonderful things like that ice palace, which, of course, the ice was all created with wax, and then the ice on the inside was created with marble powder, which had to be great on the lungs. But and this is where I think he's recreating the Pasternak poetry in a film. And so, yeah, I think this is a remarkable film. And so, yeah, deep down inside, when it came to why I said yes to this and I said no to Lawrence of Arabia, is because this is a film I wanted to see more another time. I honestly did not think I could sit through another 3.5 hours in the desert watching camels go by, but I can watch this film anytime. But and thank you, and thank you for suggesting it.
Thank you, Eric. That was awesome. Um, it's such a pleasure to have your expertise in any room. Um, just to briefly follow up, when you're making a film this long, nonetheless, you have to cut something. And critics savaged this film when it was released, um, and the film did not do well in the box office, probably in part to the um, miserable critical reception. The first 3 weeks' returns were considered a disaster. David Lean remarked that, quote, you could hurl boulders in the theater and not hurt anyone. And was so hurt by the reception, he swore he'd never make another movie. But gradually, audiences started to pick up due to strong word of mouth and to the popularity of Maurice Jarre's Laura's theme. The soundtrack sold more than 600,000 copies during the movie's initial release. So it didn't have poetry, but it had something the novel didn't, which was music. And I would suggest that the soundtrack was the poetry for the movie. Um, Ironically, when David Lean told the studio he wanted Maurice Jarre to provide the score, he was told the studio, the same studio wanted Paul Newman, Maurice is very good on sand, but I'm sure we have someone better on snow. What does that mean? It's just unbelievable. Um, Doctor Zhivago was the only movie that year that was nominated for both Best Picture and also Best Original Score, and it won for Best Original Score. And by the way, it also won for Best Screenplay. So, and in terms of Laura's theme, David Lean had heard a piece of Russian music. He thought it would be perfect. He wasn't able to secure a copyright for it. So he asked Maurice Jarre to create a suitable theme. And then he rejected all of the submissions. And Lean told him to take off the weekend, hole up with his girlfriend in a cabin in the mountains and make love for the entire weekend. And Jar returned with Laura's theme. So at least that is the story that is told. Um, so yeah, but basically, um, you always have to cut and you always have to convert things when you're going from a book to a screenplay. And there's always going to be people who are going to criticize you for things that you left out or that you changed. But yeah, I think they did an extraordinary job. And with that, Yasi, love to hear your thoughts. Okay. Uh,
Yazzie is at work, and Clubhouse is glitchy today. We had to cancel Sila's room yesterday, unfortunately, because I kept getting kicked. So,
okay. Well, Sila, grateful to have you here. Love to hear your thoughts. Then we'll go to Kathy.
Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, I saw this film for the very first time yesterday. I will begin with something that I noticed at the end. It could be only be noticed at the end, namely the I cannot remember bacala, the name of that instrument that looks like a guitar with a triangle. It's a typical Russian type of guitar.
Baraklava.
Balaclava. Okay, so I find that that disturbed me a little bit. That I have the impression, up until the very end, that this lady, this worker, is not really interested and not at all sure. She just doesn't. She doesn't really understand what's going on. So she's not really making any effort to give the the this person in charge the information he wants, so that he could decide if she is the one or not. And throughout the movie, we are listening to the whole story, how the whole thing progressed. But it is not clear how much information is coming from where and for what. So at the end, when we see her making her last moments of conversation with him before her boyfriend picks him up, and she goes away and has the guitar on her back, then I ask myself, in the storytelling, has she been speaking about this? And has he been aware of the guitar? So he should have recognized that she is the one. So it is very clear that she's the one because she's carrying the guitar from Dr. Zhivago. But I don't get the impression that he is convinced she's the one. He just says, "Please think about it." So that's one point that I found a little bit. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it didn't make any sense to me in the way I understood the storytelling in between, recollecting what had happened. I like very much something that we seldom see, which I would say is, to an extent, towards the end, it's a little bit different, but for the most part, we don't see between the two women jealousy. Not in the classical sense, at least. Maybe they feel it, but I was very impressed with the way they respect the situation. They respect themselves in the situation. They give space to the situation that one knows about the other, and there are comments going on, but he is not really very clear about what he has seen or not seen. So I like very much how subtle the three, the Manage Trois um, develops without any explosion, any demands. And from his part, I find he also played it very well, among other things, in terms of what I consider to be a really honest confrontation with two women, and you cannot pick, because there's a there's something in both of them that you don't want to let go, even though you show very clearly towards the middle that he's not going to go further out of respect, and she says the same thing. But I found that I enjoyed that very much. I liked her character very much, the one of Lara. In many ways, I found she did a very good job. Um, Also, the dynamic from the her former stepfather, who keeps coming back. Um, the the complexity of how volatile and evil he is, and at the same time he's trying to make an effort to do some, at least some things right. So I found that also very interesting. Um, Also, very much the the display of the seasons, Russian way, of course, um, and to the music that really, I don't consider that to be reminiscent of Russian music at all, but it definitely is closer to Russian snow and Russian seasons than to sand. Um, so I don't think it's a great film, but I enjoyed it very much. I probably wouldn't see it again. I had some difficulties with the rounding up of the story. To me, there was more meat in the middle and at the beginning. There was more true dynamics going on and true back and forth. Also, the who was that? Um, Geraldine.
Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin's
Geraldine
daughter,
Chaplin. Her role. What was her name again?
Donya.
Don Tonya. Yeah, her father. I enjoyed very much the way he played that role. It was kind of a very head of the family, but very tolerant in a modern way. That's the way impression I got. It was a very interesting dynamic. So I'm glad I saw the movie. I might comment more later, but that's for now. Thank you.
Yeah, it was Ralph Richardson, by the way.
Thank you, Sila. Thank you, Eric. Um, the uh, the score re- required a 110-piece orchestra, and that included 22 uh, balalaka players. Um, they were they were found through a Russian Orthodox church in Los Angeles. They couldn't read music, and they didn't know how to work with a conductor. So Maurice Jarre had to teach them 16 bars of Laura's theme by example, and then mimed and hummed their cues as they played with the orchestra. Um, and of course, we never see Zhivago play the instrument. So yeah, it's kind of like you show the gun and it never goes off. But of course, it becomes a critical plot point at the end. Um, and so there's that. I think it's pretty clear that she's the one he's looking for. There's a lot of implications in the film that things don't get spelled out. That's just the approach the film takes. Um, I think it's a great film, but I appreciate uh, your your take on it, Sila. And thank you for sharing it. Um, Kathy, go ahead.
No, just
Go
one
ahead, Sila.
second. That's one other thing I wanted to mention before I forget. You were talking before about the lack of use of poetry, him being, according to the reaction, such a great poet. I saw a movie, I don't want to go into details about that, but I find that is a very good idea. When you elevate an organist or a poet to a very high level, and you elevate him in a novel, when you want to portray him face to face in a film, then you have to make sure that it is elevated when it expresses itself. So I think it was a very good decision to keep the quality, the grandeur of his poetry so in such a way that we're not going to listen to it because we don't want to um, just keep it whole, just keep it what it is. We don't need it here, so just let's just see him as a great poet. We don't have to let him tell any poems.
But
What,
before we get to Kathy, I just wanted to Adam put in the comments Chekhov's balalaika, which I thought was a funny one.
thank you for that, Eric. Um, well, you can view it that way, or alternatively, you can view it as a challenge to live up to. In American fiction, they the book American Fiction is based on. There's an entire. It's basically about an author who writes a book badly on purpose to make fun of the industry, except things don't turn out the way he expected. And in the novel it was based on, the bad book he writes is 110 pages of a novel. I mean, the whole thing is in there. In the movie, they could have just not included any of it, but they decided to include about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, some thereabouts, and it's one of the best parts of the movie. So there's, and in fact, it turned out better than the writer director expected because of what the actors brought to it. So he actually meant it to come across as bad, but it actually comes across as pretty good because of what the actors put into it. So yeah, it's I you never know. That all these approaches are potentially valid ones. I also wanted to briefly mention I forgot to follow when I was talking about the negative initial reception and the initially terrible box office. Um, Dr. Zhivago went on to become the second highest grossing movie of 1965, just behind The Sound of Music. And it became the second most profitable movie in MGM's history, behind only Gone with the Wind. So, and it got 10 Academy Award nominations, and it won 5 of those. So, and David Lean used to joke that uh, it made more the movie grossed more than every other movie he directed put together, which is unlikely given that he'd done Lawrence of Arabia and the Bridge over the River Kwai, but that's what he used to say. So this did very well for itself ultimately. Sometimes you just have to be patient and let people discover a film. Anyway, Kathy, thank you so much for being on stage. Really appreciate it, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
I am way out of my league, as I normally am when Eric and I are talking. Thank you for letting me up. I haven't seen this movie for
That is so untrue, Kathy. That is absolutely not true. And thank you again for being here.
Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I do have a tenuous link to this movie, and it's a big part of UK bank holiday culture. Your public holidays. In that we were often forced to sit and watch this movie. And I say we, and I mean by my mother, because of Omar Sharif. I didn't like it as a kid. It didn't do anything for me, obviously. As I grew older and I appreciated it more. but it's one of those films where the scope is just so enormous. And that's without knowing anything about Pasternak or anything about history in any detail, but the scope is eye-watering, as it often is with Lean. Um, and I think it accomplishes it. Nowadays, I mean, if I see it on TV, yep, I'll sit and watch that for a couple of hours. I love it. The tenuous link is that my cousin's husband, ex-husband, I should say now, who has been in a few movies, when he went to Hollywood, he stayed with Rod Steiger for about 6 months, who very kindly put him up and let him stay at his rather lovely home. So that gives me a claim on it, I believe. But I think one of the things about Russian culture, and I only know this from being forced to chaperone a bunch of Russian students when I was in uni, you don't need to produce poetry to say you're a poet in Russia. It's enough to just say it. So that kind of fits in a little bit with the movie, I think, in an ironic way. It's like saying you're a emo or a goth or whatever. You don't have to produce anything to say you're a poet in Russia. The music is beautiful. I totally take the point. I'm kind of, Lean. I really don't like Lawrence of Arabia for lots of reasons. But this is almost you've got actors right at the peak of their power. They could, this is the world championship fight. I can't imagine anybody else in any of these roles. And I really appreciate your background on some of the people that turned it down. Michael Caine would have been a disaster. Jane Fonda is interesting. But yeah, it's a great movie. In that lovely Russian way, and there are no love triangles in Russian literature. There are only quadrangles or whatever is bigger than that. For me, the love stories, I don't know why, and people can disagree with me, and I'm happy to take that, but kind of reminded me a bit of the love stories in Anna Karenina, where you've got the Kitty and what's his face and the Anna and Vronsky thing going on. Different completely, but you've got to have at least 4 people involved in your love life in Russia, and it's kind of, it's much like the French way. It's like it's kind of part of being in a relationship is having at least a few other people involved in some way. So that's a plebs view. And again, I thank you guys for letting me up on the stage. I do like these rooms. I don't get to them as often as I could. Is that true, Eric? Holy moly. So thank you for the insight and what you said so far. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward now to hearing what Ruby says. And I don't know how we nominate the next movie, but I have a couple of ideas. So thank you very much. I'll land my plane.
We do that at the end of the show, Kathy. If for some reason you can't stay to the end of the show, just leave it in the comments. It would be for the last week in May, because we're scheduled right now through the last week in May.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for being here, Kathy. We miss you when you're not, but we appreciate it when you are.
Totally. Thank you so much, Kathy. Really great to have you here, and thank you for all those wonderful and insightful comments. And just before we get to Ruby, just to follow up, since you mentioned casting, I just have a couple of others. Screenwriter Robert Bolt recommended Albert Finney for the role of Pasha, and he wrote Finney a long letter to convince him to accept. Then David Lean refused, largely because Finney had turned down the title role of in Lawrence of Arabia, and he was still apparently holding a grudge about that. So there's that. And also, Lean asked Marlon Brando to play Victor Karmavsky, and Brando didn't even respond. So uh, then Lean offered the part to James Mason, who accepted. Um,
Ooh. No. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Sorry.
okay. Do you want to interject?
No, I worship James Mason. Um, I'll tell you a funny story if we have time later. But that's a very interesting casting. Very interesting.
And yeah, Mason accepted, but then he eventually dropped out. I assume for some kind of conflict, and Rod Steiger got the role. Um, and Steiger was basically stuck there for on set for 12 months. So it was a huge commitment. Um, Steiger later said, and by the way, it was scheduled to be 9 months, but Lean said he wanted all four seasons, so he extended it for another 3 months. Um, I mean, the original budget for this movie was 5 million, and by the time Lean was done, it was 15 million. He tripled the budget. So thank God the movie did well. Otherwise, it would have been a financial disaster for MGM. Um, and regarding Brando, Lean also offered him a role in Ryan's Daughter, um, and which he did not accept, and his unmade film Nostromo. Um, so anyway, Rod Steiger said he was one of the very few Americans. He felt self-conscious being one of very few Americans among so many great British actors. And he said, quote, all I wanted to do was not embarrass myself. Um, and when Laura slaps Victor and Rod Steiger, slaps her back, Steiger's slap was not in the script and was not discussed before it happened. Steiger did it spontaneously, just slapped her back. And Julie Christie's stunned reaction was genuine.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, he said he did it instinctively, but
Which
Steiger
is not good.
drove Lean absolutely nuts with all his Stanislavski nonsense, which Lean was looking for a method actor for that, and that's why he originally went to Brando. And but there's a great story Tom Courtney tells about Lean ushering him to whisper in his ear behind a pillar to tell him what a good job he'd done shooting that day. And he said, "Well, why are you hiding behind a pillar?" He's like, "Because I didn't want to see Rod Steiger. He drives me nuts with all his questions about motivation." Yeah, but interesting point. I did want to correct two things. Number one, on the casting thing, James Mason dropped out because Peter O'Toole got his ear and told him what it was like being on a David Lean set for 18 months on Lawrence of Arabia, and Mason just didn't feel like he wanted to be any part of that. And also, as far as the budget going from 5 million to 15 million, that was a Carlo Ponte thing, because he basically used the fact that this was being shot in Spain as a money laundering operation. But the initial budget was meaningless. But he was running his airplane through the budget. He was running his home office and pretty much anything. And there's actually about 3 other films that Ponte produced, including Michelangelo Antonioni's Zabriskie Point and The Passenger, that actually just kind of got packed in to the budget of Dr. Zhivago. So yeah, it wasn't all David Lean added $10 million to the budget. This was the Carlo. This is the price you paid for working with Carlo Ponte at that time, who was a great producer who made a lot of great films for great directors. The Leopard, I think, is a great film, but not the most scrupulous of businessmen. So those are my only corrections.
That's absolutely fascinating. Those weren't corrections, they were enhancements. Uh, thank you very much for sharing those, Eric. That's awesome. Um, so, by the way, just final follow up on the slap. Um, 2 years later, Rod Steiger was in the Heat of a Night, which also features a very famous counter slap. So just not Steiger. Steiger had to react to that in that film instead of doing the slap, and that slap was practiced. Um, in fact, the director had had the actor practice the slap on him rather than on Sidney Poitier. Uh, anyway, Ruby, thank you so much for being here. Um, totally thrilled and delighted to have you on stage. Would love to hear your comments on the film.
I'm not sure they're going to be that deep, but um, it was my mom's favorite film ever. So as a child, I was forced to watch it several times, and I maybe didn't appreciate it too much when I was younger. But I remember watching it as a teenager, and my mother would sob at the end every time about the lost love, the lost opportunity, the moment when it could have been, and they just miss each other. And she had this whole philosophy in life that everything was about chances and the people that cross your path, and what they add or subtract from your life, and being in the right place at the right time, and meeting, my mother was a big romantic, so meeting your soulmate and not missing your opportunity, and being attuned to the universe and your heart. And so all these things, this is what this movie meant to my mother. And so anyway, to me, I just think I think that is the power. One of the elements of power of this movie is the angst of the couple, the relationship of like the almost, and the not getting together, and um, what could have been, what's lost, what loves in your life are real, and should be and can never be, and the what's that called, unquieted, or whatever it is. And it's kind of like what makes vampire romance movies so popular and stuff too. It's like you just the love that cannot be, right? And so to me, it's kind of the quintessential movie for that. And then because of seeing that when I was younger, I see it repeated, the thread repeated in many great movies that I watch. So, um, you know, uh, I just keep seeing it, and as a storyteller, I just think about it a lot. Like, how can you create that depth of angst, and that depth of character, and romantic emotion in the things that you're trying to write? And a couple of movies just went through my head and then slipped out the other side, unfortunately. But most recently, we had a discussion about, and Hai's going to help me with the name of it because I've already forgotten. Oh, what's the modern day movie I said was the parallel to this? Hai? It's late in the day. My brain isn't working.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Was
Oh,
it
come on.
Saltburn?
That's what started this whole thing.
Was it Saltburn?
No, not Sulfur.
Was
No,
it Cocaine Bear?
no, it wasn't that.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Definitely not that. Um, uh, Hi, come on now. It's the Korean movie.
Oh, Past Lives.
Thank you. Oh, I could not get that to come on my brain. So yes, Past Lives, I think, is a modern day Dr. Zhivago, and it's the love you yearn for, that you miss, that you cannot have, that sweeps you by. And the other one that strikes me is Bridges of Madison County, and that great moment where Meryl Streep's hands on the doorknob, and she's had this experience of love she's never had before while her husband is gone, and he's waiting for her. You know, Clint Eastwood is the other character, and he's waiting for her in the truck ahead, idling at the light. And does she pop the door, dive out, and leave this decent, good, kind man that's been her husband all these years, that hasn't done her wrong, for this experience of deep love that she's had in this whirlwind romance while he was gone? Or does she stick with her life, her children, what she's built, and just go on with that experience? And it's this horrible moment where she has to make the choice. And I remember like screaming my head off at that movie, open the door, go, you know. But she sticks, you know. So it's that kind of unrequited love that you can't obtain, but crosses your life once in a while. And I just think it's really real, and really, it's really gut wrenching, and it's really emotional. And yeah. And I also, there was a great movie called The Dressmaker that just ruined me with, I'm going to forget her name too, because this is late in the day. But Titanic star, help me out here. Um, Fabulous movie, but destroyed me because I didn't see it coming. And, you know, literally this kind of love that she almost had but missed out on. And yeah, I just think it's really real. And I think it was a fabulous movie. I still recall the ice scene of the beautiful building. And I just read that it was mostly shot in Spain because they weren't allowed to shoot in Russia because the book was banned in Russia. I just read that.
That's
It was
correct.
Kate Winslet, by the way, was in The Dressmaker.
Thank you so much. Your mind is like checking in much better than mine at this hour.
Nope, Googled it.
Oh, thank you. I've been working on my
I
novel
thought it
all
was Kate
day and
Winslet,
I'm
but that
kind
isn't.
of fried. So please excuse that I can't bring up these things. But anyway, that's
Hi,
what I think.
can I talk about the Spain thing
Awesome,
real
Ruby.
quick?
Um, yeah, let me just. I want to thank Ruby for um, for sharing so deeply, and talking about emotion, which is so totally appropriate for this film. And I'm so appreciate you being here. Um, Ruby and I talked briefly about the film because, as I mentioned up front, I saw the film because of Ruby. Ruby recommended it, and the thing that got me at the end was when they talked about Zhivago's paper thin heart. That that uh, I just it just floors me. It still floors me. That's just so sad, and but it's so affecting. So thank you, Ruby, for talking about feelings. Really appreciate it. Um, and Adam, thank you for joining us. We'll get to you in moments, but Eric, go ahead and talk about shooting in Spain. I might have some details to add depending on what you say.
Well, and I'll be real quick, but there is a real irony here that this was being shot in Franco's Spain, and that those soldiers dressed up as red and white army soldiers were Franco's army, who were hired as the extras for the production. And of course, Franco's whole reason for being was the fascist reaction to the exact Russian Revolution that this is portraying, and his soldiers are dressed as communists. One of my favorite stories from the set was when they're singing L'Internationale. The police were called because they thought that it was yet another communist uprising against Franco, and somebody had to explain, no, 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 we're shooting a movie, and the police still stuck around to see who among the soldiers knew the lyrics very, very well, so that they could become suspicious of it. And but apparently, one block down, people heard the singing of the Internationale, and thought Franco was dead, and they started popping champagne corks because the only reason you would hear it in the streets is if Franco was dead. So, yeah, but sorry about the digression, but I just thought that story was too funny.
There are no digressions. We're talking about the film. There's not a digression. That's great stuff. Um, not only were the police listening, but many extras pretended they didn't know the words because they knew the police were listening, and the extras had been rehearsed singing the song right before the scene was shot, so they knew the words, but they were so scared they pretended they didn't. So that was a messy situation. Um, the um, the winter scenes didn't go as planned because it was unusually mild weather in Spain. So the winter scenes were mostly filmed in summer, with the actors and actresses wearing heavy Russian furs in temperatures as high as 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And as was mentioned, with marble dust and plastic snow standing in for actual snow. Costume designer Phyllis Dalton had to keep strict watch over the extras to make sure none of them shed layers of clothing to cool off. And Omar Sharif later said, "We had an army of makeup assistants who every 2 minutes came and dabbed you because we were sweating profusely." So that's some of the ramifications of shooting in Spain. Um, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. They imported 4,000 daffodils from the Netherlands um, for to represent where his father-in-law's country estate was located. All kinds of course, they built a 10-acre replica of Moscow in a suburb of Madrid, near Madrid's international airport. John Box and his crew spent 6 months turning the 10-acre studio, CEA Studios, into a reproduction of Moscow between 1905 and 1920. It included a cobbled 800-yard street with trolley cars, a viaduct with real train engines, an authentic replica of a Kremlin, a church, and 60 shops and houses circling a giant plaza. And Pasha's armor train was an accurate replica of trains used during World War I and World War II to travel across areas with heavy snow that were inaccessible to trucks or tanks. So they went to a lot of effort to make this look real. Um, okay. Anyway, I will shut up and I will welcome Adam again to the stage, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the film. Adam, there you go.
Thanks for having. Yeah, sorry about that. Hi. My phone timed out. Thanks for having me up. I'm just.
Could you move the microphone a little closer to your mouth?
Yeah, sorry. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the information I'm hearing on this is amazing. I never heard the thing about the Spanish soldiers. But yeah,
Adam, I'm still having trouble hearing you.
oh,
Could you could
hang
you
on.
try adjusting things?
Yeah, hang on. I'm gonna take off.
It's the volume. You're coming in clear, but the volume is too low.
Okay, I think it was I was
Oh,
on my
that's
headset.
Don's
Oh my God,
1,000%
that's
better.
Yeah,
wow.
I was on my headset and I think the battery was running low on it. Because I'm like working while I'm listening to you guys. Um yeah, I didn't watch it recently, so it's not as fresh in my mind, but I remember the first time I watched this, I was 12. It was in one of my AP classes, and it took like 3 classes to watch it. So I ended up renting it from the library because I was like, this is taking so long to watch. But it's, you know, it's always been one of my favorite films. I watched it more often when I was younger. And it's been a while, but I did want to say it did actually make more than Lawrence of Arabia and Bridge over the River Kwai. Not just because the combined budgets of the other 2 films was more than the budget of Dr. Zhivago, but the total the total haul from Dr. Zhivago was more than the total of the other 2.
Yeah, it's the biggest grossing film in North America or something of all time. That's what they
Yeah,
said.
well, if you adjust for inflation, it made just in North America $1 billion, and it made about 2.5 billion worldwide. So it was up, it was Avengers sequel territory.
Yeah, it sold almost 250 million tickets worldwide.
Thanks for coming, Adam. We had to do the ruling class without you, and we had to do One-Eyed Jacks without you. So I would like to, since you were the one who recommended those 2, suggest both of them are available on replay, so you can at least hear what we had to say about your films.
Yeah, I got really sick. I got I can't remember what it was called. Some flu B something. I don't remember. It had some weird variant name, but I was sick for like 10 days, so I missed a couple rooms. And then got an additional writing job, and I've had so much work, so I haven't even been able to make a lot of other things as well.
Well,
Well,
we,
that's
we
a nice
appreciate
thing
you
to
being
have.
here.
It's always good to have too much work.
Yeah, and just had a new baby a couple days ago.
Aw.
Wow. Congratulations.
An adorable baby.
There's a clue in the picture, everybody.
What is the
Yeah.
new one's name, or do you want to say?
Her name is Bila.
Aw.
Beautiful.
Her name is actually a lot longer than that, but
I also did want to make a correction from last week and many, many weeks. I have been constantly crediting Freddie Francis as the cinematographer for this film. And I didn't realize until Omar Sharif comes on that I that I was misattributing him, that I'd been confusing him and Freddie Young for pretty much my whole entire life, until you get that shot of Omar Sharif, and they move in on his eyes. And I'm like, gosh, that's a rather dull shot of eyes for a man who's specialized in literally had a special kit just to light eyes. That's like what Freddie Francis was known for. So I rewound the film and I was like, Freddie Young, oh my God. And I was like, so I guess he didn't do Lawrence of Arabia either. Yep, nope. I had been confusing Freddie Young and Freddie Francis my entire life. So I was this week old when I learned that.
Thank you for sharing that, Eric. That is good to know, and generous of you to share that. So appreciate it.
I was going to say, I think on behalf of the whole room, Eric, you are forgiven.
Yeah,
Well, we did Freddie Francis last week, and we did him for the Innocents, and we're doing him for the Elephant Man. So I kept saying, well, this is like Freddie Francis month, but sorry, Freddie Young. Mm-hmm.
and while we're forgiving, Adam, you're totally forgiven for having lots of wonderful work and having a baby. Um, and we enjoyed both of the films that you recommended, so thank you for recommending them. I want to mention just a few quick things involving Laura. Um, that's kind of interesting trivia. Yuri and Laura's first lines of dialogue with each other don't happen until an hour and 21 minutes into the movie. Um, so that's an interesting strategy. Um, when Yuri and Laura accidentally do bump into each other on the streetcar, their first meeting, the overhead cable sparks on the wire. So that's kind of the modus operandi of a film. Um, the cut from Laura and Komarovsky's first kiss and the Troika, um, they kiss and then there's a cut to the command mount with a visual of a rider mounting his horse. So that's another a little subtext thing. And Yuri glances at a blood stain in the snow, and then there's a cut to Laura saying goodnight to Komarovsky. So there's this is the way the film did stuff. Um, oh, and the scene where Yuri is chasing the streetcar and finds a seat behind Lara um, was kind of homaged 2 years later in The Graduate. So those are some little tidbits about Lara I wanted to share. Um, and speaking of Freddie Young, um, he had been he collaborated with Lean on Lawrence of Arabia, and he was hesitant to take on this job because Lawrence of Arabia was so exhausting. Um, but uh, Lean had hired Nicholas Rogue um, and to be director of photography, but they had major creative differences. So then Freddie Young took over, and an additional 2 weeks of photography was required to reshoot scenes that Rogue had shot. Anyway, let me open the floor to anybody who wants to say anything about the movie.
Hi, is Nicholas Rogue the David Bowie guy?
Yes, Man That Fell to Earth. Yes, he also performance with Mick Jagger. Don't Look Now was when he was the one that I think number 6 on the BFI list of best films of all time was his most famous directorial work. I'd like to drill down a little bit into what their creative differences were, because I think one of the things that makes this movie is the thing that Lean was trying to hold his line on, which is that Rogue had said he wanted to film the war scenes with the muted colors and the romance scenes with the vibrant colors, and Lean did it the opposite, and that's the way the film is done, which is that you get the vibrant colors for for the violent scenes, and you get the muted, desaturated color for the private lives. And Lean was drawing on, Kathy, you'll like this because it's Fablian, the kitchen sink drama movement, and thought that that by draining these of color, that he was giving the same kind of impression that he or that feeling that he had gotten from things like Freddie Francis's photography in Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, or Oswald Morris's photography in the Tony Richardson films. Uh, and that was a lot of the reason why he cast the way that he did in terms of using Rita Tushingham, who plebeian enough for you, Kathy, of course, from A Taste of Honey and the Knack and How to Get It, and of course, Tom Courtenay from Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner and Billy Liar, which, if you've seen those films, which came out, and then Julia Christie from, of course, Darling, which was also kind of an offshoot of that. It was a slicker production because it was Schlesinger had set it in the art scene. But these were all people that we were familiar with uh, through films that were, to use Kathy's word, more plebeian. And think that was one of the more genius things, is because we're carrying with us our knowledge of these people as working class characters that they portrayed, as opposed to filling these people with people from the traditional Shakespearean stage, like a Ralph Richardson, which. Of course, you have Ralph Richardson, but he's playing an aristocrat. But the point is that they are working class, and so not only did he cast people who we associate from working class films, but he allows them to speak in a working class way throughout it, which I think it really highlights the essence of this film without out loud saying that despite the Russian Revolution, all of the class distinctions still exist. So, yeah, I'll end on that.
I'm glad you shared that section, that point to the Yuri when he goes in the tram following Lara, but he sits one row behind her. I was asking myself, why does he do that? But now I understand why that was done.
Eric, you've knocked it out the park again, but all I was going to say was let's have a shout out for really great looking couples on screen. Omar Sharif and Julie Christie, peak for both of them. That's hard to beat. I'm thinking Monty Clift, Elizabeth Taylor territory, possibly Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas in the Marvel movies. Still the best looking couple in that franchise. But yeah, when you get the look right, that can be something else.
Well,
You always have to bring the marbles up, don't
I
you,
do.
Kathy?
I do. I do.
We love you for it.
so if we're going to go back to casting, I have another few little tidbits. David Lean wanted Audrey Hepburn to play Tanya, but he was so impressed with Geraldine Chaplin's audition, he cast her on the spot. And Omar Sharif's son plays young Yuri Zhivago at his mother's funeral. Alec Guinness and David Lean frequently quarreled on the set. According to Guinness, Lean was, quote, acting the part of a superstar director and frequently insulted Guinness's performance and him personally. They didn't work together again until A Passage to India, decades later. I really liked Alec Guinness's performance. I thought it was awesome. I can't imagine what they argued about. Eric, do you know anything about that?
I actually do. I actually do. Because Lean had wanted him to be just so incredibly proper and solid, and Alec Guinness said, well, why didn't you hire a goddamn statue? if that's what you wanted. And so Lean was very concerned with how he stood and how he looked, and Guinness, who has a great sense of humor, was seeing Lean bending over backwards so that Rod Steiger could find out what his motivation is, and he's being told to fucking act like a statue, and though that is Alec Guinness's exact words. And he felt like Lean had given him this role that he wasn't going to be able to show any kind of life in, or be memorable at all in. And also that when it came time to do the old counting of lines, he had the least number of lines of any of the major actors in the film, which was a thing that actors still do to this day. You know, they count their lines, but here's where I side with Alec Guinness. Has anybody ever seen the film The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole?
So long ago, I barely remember. I saw it when it originally came out, but I don't remember much about it.
It was made in 1979. It's about a film set, and it's about a criminal who's trying to hide as a stuntman on a film set, and a psychopathic director who he thinks is out to kill him. And Peter O'Toole based his performance on David Lean and his experiences with David Lean in making Lawrence of Arabia. And I'm not going to call this trivia because it's not trivial, but that scene on the train, the one with Klaus Kinski, where they drag the woman up, and you see the woman slip. She really slipped, and she fell under that car, and she was hospitalized for weeks, and her legs still never worked 100%. They had to reattach her tendons, and Lean literally said, "Well, dress the double. We have to keep shooting." Now, Sharif, in the making of documentary, which is ironic, by the way, I never fell asleep during Dr. Zhivago. I fell asleep actually watching the making of documentary. So that tells you everything you need to know about me. But says that Lean offset was very concerned about her, visited her at the hospital virtually every day, and was really broken up. But he couldn't allow himself to be seen that way. But you also have to remember, David Lean is a man who abandoned his family twice, abandoned his children twice. So he has two sets of children from two different wives who haven't known him since they were 4 years old. Which I don't know the circumstances. I wasn't there, but it does suggest kind of a coldness, to be able to do that. I can't imagine doing that, but maybe circumstances, maybe circumstances. And when you look at, for instance, when Pauline Kael dared to say that David Lean wasn't making good movies anymore, and he just said, "Well, that's okay. Oh, that's it. I'm just not making any movies anymore." And you actually watch the film he made after this and see that maybe Kyle had a point that because it's not a very, very good movie. Ryan's Daughter, but he literally, in the press and in a documentary about Pauline Kael made after she died, blames Kyle for him not having made another film until Passage to India. You don't hear stories like that about Alec Guinness, is all I'm going to say.
Well, first of all, Eric, you're a marvel for knowing the details of the fight with Alec Guinness. Um, that's amazing. You just you know all of these things. That's fantastic.
That's in Alec Guinness's autobiography.
But which apparently I guess you've read. David Lean also had a lot of fights with Julie Christie. He championed Julie Christie to the studio executives, um, but he had a hard time getting what he wanted out of her early on. Um, according to IMDb, rather than give her time to explore the role, he kept at her to get exactly what he wanted. When filming returned to Spain after time in Finland, she finally collapsed under the pressure. Gradually, however, they developed a working rapport. Lean visited her in her apartment in Madrid and was quick to accept her suggestions for the script. By the time production had finished, they had forged a lasting friendship, but they never worked together again. Lean had a contentious time with a number of people. Um, yeah,
Robert Mitchum said he'd never work with him again.
yeah. But we just had I don't know, again, I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if it's because Lean was a perfectionist or he had just this clear vision of a film, or if it went beyond that. We just did a room before this room, um, in Dorn's room, about quiet on set and toxic work environments. And I don't know what the reality is, but having a 12-month shoot is is pretty challenging as well. But anyway, it's interesting. This is a guy who made some of the greatest films ever. Um, Eric, do you have a take on you know on do you have a take on Lean as a person and as a professional?
I do.
Well, mine's quick. Horrible people make great art all the time. But go ahead, Kathy.
All I was going to say is that a lot of artists are forgiven very shitty behaviour, and with my feminist, not the fun kind, hat on, that is almost always men. If you produce the art, and certainly if you produce the money, you're allowed carte blanche until you're called out, like your Keitels and not Keitel, sorry, Weinstein and other people. A lot goes under the carpet, I think, for male producers of art, and that's across the board, not just movies.
I would also like to take up Yazzy's point about just that, for once I agree with Kyle. There are people who literally blame Pauline Kael for the fact that we don't have more David Lean films and hold that against her. There literally are. And I mean, not talking about like people I know, I mean people who are substantial writers in their field. I'm sorry, that one's not on her. Quite honestly, number one, and number two, I hate to be this negative, but if it spared us, 14 years of Ryan's Daughters, then thank you, because I don't think I could have taken that if that was the way that Lean was going to go. But Kyle had a point, which was that Lean used to make these films like Brief Encounter, like Summertime, like his Dickens adaptations, which were unique and looked like absolutely nothing else. And then he was able to take a unique vision that looked like nothing else and put it onto a large screen. And her point was that the bigger these films got, the more they had the look of a David Lean film without having the feeling of the original author and the original material. And then when it came to Ryan's Daughter, which was not based on a novel, where it was an original idea by he and Bolt, it was a completely empty enterprise because, and her point was that Lean was very good at adapting other people's ideas, but had no real ideas of his own, which is a mean thing to say. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I I'm only basing it on the one film, but she probably was right. That because of course, A Passage to India was a great film, of course, but he was adapting it from E.M. Forrester. So there's that. But if you also look at the film that Spielberg took over from him, which I'm not, Empire of the Sun, that was a rather empty enterprise as well, even with Spielberg at the helm. He is, I think, a great director of projecting other people's ideas. I don't think of him as a genius.
I can't go along with that. There's, first of all, there's tremendous. Well, first of all, just just to be nitpicky, I think it's Pauline Kael. I think her last name is pronounced Kael. The
I learned it by reading, so you're probably right and I'm probably wrong.
Okay, because I had a friend who talked about Pauline Kael a lot. The there's an art to translating from one medium to another. It's a great art, and I deeply respect it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with. I mean, Shakespeare didn't stole most of his plots from earlier stories, but he made it into Shakespeare. So I wouldn't knock anybody for being great and translating other people's works into their own visual style and their own voice. Um, but if you want to knock him for being difficult to work with, or that's. But I don't think it's appropriate to knock anybody for saying, you know, they worked on adaptations. That's a tremendous art to be able to do. That's why, you know, you've got two categories at the Oscars for original screenplay and adapted screenplay. But I value, I value everything you've been kind enough to share. Um, does anybody does anybody want to say anything else about uh, but Eric Eric often uh, makes a comment about how the discussion ran longer than the film itself. I don't think that's going to happen in this case. So this is one time we're probably safe from that. So I'm not rushing anybody, but would welcome. And by the way, if there's anyone in the audience who wants to come up, please just raise your hand. Um, we always welcome all voices. Um, but if anyone wants to say anything else, please go ahead.
Hi, I put a link in the chat for your next movie because you still haven't watched the other movie I told you to watch. Little off topic, but
Is it UK cinema though?
no,
It
I
definitely.
don't think so.
Then we can't do it. Then.
Oh no, I just
What?
mean you need to watch
When
it.
understanding movie. Oh, okay. Well, if Hi thinks it's worth the conversation, we have a sister podcast that's on hiatus called Understanding Movies, and we can run it through those folks over there.
Ruby, are you talking about the Robin Williams movie?
No,
Oh, what?
I know you won't watch that.
I will.
Um,
I bought it. I'll watch it. I will.
no, it's the Baby Jane movie. The
Oh, okay.
You have to watch that. Like, I don't know. To me, it's just a classic. I lump all of these movies into classic movies from, long ago kind of thing. So
I
I wasn't really even thinking of this one as being a UK movie, but I guess it is.
I'm slowly working my way through my list. I'm watching The Bear right now. It took me like 2 years to get to it. I'm getting there. Be patient with me.
I have a suggestion, but it's European, and UK doesn't technically belong. Geographically, we do.
How plebeian of you, Cassie.
I am a pleb. Eric, you picked up on that pretty early. That's my station in life. I'll take it.
You forgot the suggestion.
Oh yes, sorry. It's it's a movie that appealed to me just from the description a few years ago. It's called Brotherhood of the Wolf. I don't know if you've covered it before. It's a French subtitle movie. Monica Bellucci, Vincent Cassel, a few other well-known in Europe actors. Covers a lot of stuff. Covers a lot of genres, I think. It's my favorite film. I love it.
Actually, that Yazzie and I have been talking about doing a separate room on different outside of UK cinema, and yeah, if we can make sure we work around your schedule, we'll try and schedule it into that once we get that up and running. We're just to kind of fill in the gap because with understanding movies on hiatus and the Criterion selection out. UK cinema history seems to be it, and we can't cover we can't cover everything, especially once a week. So, but Yazzie and I have been talking in back channels about arranging for kind of we want to find a different twist on it because we don't think we need two understanding movies rooms, but look for that sometime this summer.
I wanted to make.
Go ahead, Sila. I was just going to say, I don't think you need a twist. There's always room for another movie house. But do whatever you feel is right. But you don't need if you want to put a twist on it, do. But it isn't really necessary. Go
Okay,
ahead, Sila.
we're thinking of starting with giallo, Italian horror films as our first theme, just to give you an indication. By the way.
No, I just wanted to come back for 2 seconds to the idea of the spontaneous slapping back of the girl by whatever his name was. I get all these names confused. And
Rod
Rod
Steiger.
Steiger.
correct. So my immediate reaction was to cringe because if he did it spontaneously from himself, I have, for many reasons, have great difficulties with that. However, his view of her was such that if he was really deep in that character, that would match his character, the way he portrayed it. To slap back because he really didn't think highly of her. He wanted her, but he was not really respecting her.
Well, and Steiger, to his credit, has followed up on that, talking about the method and how he cannot see his character as being a bad guy. He says, he wanted to sleep with the mother and the daughter. Who on this earth wouldn't, is what he said, which tells you more about Rod Steiger than it does about anything else. But that he, and if you look at Steiger's version of that character arc and compare him to the character in the novel, there is something noble about that because he something happens. So there is a change. I love is an overstatement, but he gains something for her because, of course, even though she's with another man that he knows he won't leave, he comes to try and rescue her not once but twice. He's driven into alcoholism by the loss of her, which there's there's a bit about cocaine in the novel that they take out, and then when she and Yuri are separated, raises Yuri's child. until they're separated that one day in Manchuria. So so there is something to be said about what Steiger brings to the character, because these are nuances in the character that he portrays, and I think he does it very, very well. So he's not just your typical archvillain in this.
Well, well, my
I just think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, my understanding is, I don't know if this is true. Someone told me this about being a fact, but I don't know, that it is not uncommon in the Russian culture to do that. Not in that constellation, but when you are dating a woman, it is possible, according to this person who told me that the mother will have a certain access to find certain, to consider certain things. I'm trying to be careful with my language, but according to him, that seems to be in part of the Russian culture.
I personally just think that Hollywood in that era was big on face slapping, which really annoys me in a lot of the old films. Women slap men constantly, constantly, and it's a supposed source of power. It's just an old movie thing. I think it must have been written by men. That was the only way they could figure out how to give women power. And then he reversed it. I just really think it's an old modality from old films, and I think took he 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 took it one step further. You know, it's like anybody today who does anything for shock value. I really think you're reading too much into him being a method actor on this. I really just think it's a 1950s trait in movies.
Yep, yep,
That's
yep,
the
yep.
best thing in the world.
Sorry,
Well, not just Hollywood, all internationally.
Okay,
sorry to
yes, but
overtalk through.
at the time that was a big thing. And when I watch older films now, it annoys the crap out of me when I see, like, even the Philadelphia story, we watched it a while ago, and when he just face plants her and shoves her back through the door at the beginning, I mean, that was supposed to be this epic, very cool beginning to this movie. And watching it now, I was thoroughly annoyed because she stood her ground and she was a strong woman. And he just dismisses her literally by covering her face with his hand and shoving her down. And this is supposed to be funny, and she thinks it's funny. I don't know. Times have changed, but I really think even then that was dismissive of women in movies. And I don't know. Too much face slapping for me. Don't like it. They could be more creative.
It's a terrible look. It's a terrible look, and you know the movie that I had to sit through, so you guys probably didn't have to, was the remake of The Wicker Man, which was basically just an excuse for Nicolas Cage to hit women. It is the worst thing. And I've seen some Steven Seagal movies. It is the worst thing I've ever seen. It's like, okay, what can we do now? Let's hit her. It's fucking horrible. It's fucking horrible. Sorry.
It's one of the biggest degrading things to do to a woman or any human on the planet. I remember parents used to slap kids in the head to gain power over them. And as a teacher, that irked the crap out of me in my career. You know, you'd have something to say to a parent about a child's performance, and you're seeking their help, and you need them straightened out. And then I would catch them in the parking lot, slap them in the head or across the face. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not what I wanted from you. And now I see why your child is acting the way they are to me. It's degrading. It's dismissive. It means you mean nothing to anyone. It to hit someone in the head or the face is like literally smacking your face on it. Your worldview is just boom. Like, I just can't say enough about it. I just really, really hate it, and I really wish they hadn't. And I'm glad now they've kind of moved away from it. But you're right, Kathy. There are still some movies where I see this happen, and it's like, can a woman never gain power in any other way but to smack a guy in the face? And that culture also at that time had this thing about, and it's in a lot of old movies, where if a woman was acting out or hollering and, quote, hysterically, they would smack people to bring them out of it. And it was a joke in Hollywood, like, get a hold of yourself, whack, and it was usually always women to shut them up or settle them down or make them complacent. And I just really hate it. Can't say enough. I'll shut up now.
Sharon Moonstruck.
Yes, I love that movie, but I hate that moment. I'm just like that. Why? You were such a powerful character. Do something else. Make some other move. And that's not love, by the way, to smack someone in the face, in my opinion.
This is a conversation worthy of a room on its own, but there's several psychological reasons given by people who do those Freudian analyses of films, but basically the idea was that since you've deprived these films of sex, that the smacking was the only outlet. And so, if you look back at like the great Cagney performances or all of those gangster films, a star wasn't a star until he'd slapped his first co-star. So, there's that.
Yeah, it's like we know in certain cultures and at certain times in history and whatnot that happens. We don't have to see it in the film,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't need to see it, and you don't even need to imply it. For I hope Ruby will agree with me, but as women, we know when a slap's coming up. We know when some violence to women is coming up. We're hardwired in a. I think we're getting off the topic though. I'm sorry, Hi and Eric, and this might be a different discussion. I'm sorry. It's nearly
No,
11 in the
don't
It'd
UK.
apologize.
be a good room on its own, though.
Yeah, it should be, because, like, honestly, I'll just say one last thing. And if that's true, Eric, and I'm not challenging you, I'm saying that just is shocking to me that they weren't a co-star till they slapped their first woman. How pathetic is that bar? How pathetic is that bar that you gain notoriety on abuse of another human being, female in particular, but regardless of the human being. And I agree, like, I love Cary Grant to death, but there's a whole lot of stuff in his movies. Like, it's the slap is a really big ploy. And I'm not blaming him. He didn't think of it, I'm sure. But it's what makes those movies now fall away in their worth to a lot of younger generation, which is sad. That, and also, a lot of antiquated way they talk about women and misogynistic stuff. But there are some of those movies that have some great value and worth. But I think that's the one thing that resonates so hard with young women. When they see that, they're absolutely shocked that this was allowed to go on, right? And so it's interesting. Yeah, for sure.
I'll just note that regarding working with method actors, Hitchcock had a lot of trouble for that reason with Paul Newman. And at one point, Newman asked, "What's my motivation?" in Torn Curtain. And Hitchcock responded, "Your salary." And that was Hitchcock's feeling about it. It's like one point Hitchcock asked, I don't remember if it was Newman or another, I think it was a different method actor. Eric, you probably know. If he asked somebody just to look up, look up because there was something happening in a window across the street, of a building across the street, and he said, what's my motivation for looking up? He said, my God, just look up. I just need you to look up. Yeah, there was some contentious stuff with that as well.
But sorry, Hi, but Hitchcock also, I think, quite famously was out of the park horrible to Tippi Hedren on the birds. She wasn't allowed to method act that there were some birds attacking her. He let the birds out on her in a telephone box. Am I wrong on this?
No, he led her to believe that they were going to. He didn't actually do it, but to get the reaction he wanted, he led her to believe that was what was about to happen, and shot it, which is still bad. But technically legal, I guess. But Hitchcock also was famous for saying that actors are cattle. That
Actors should be treated as cattle. Yeah, he always made that distinction. No, there's a history of toxic work environments. William Friedkin on Killer Joe. I'm trying to remember which actress, but on one of the actresses, he treated her horribly, and he said degrading things to her, and made her think that she had no talent. And then at the end of set, he was very nice to her, and he said, oh no, I think she was speaking to his wife, and his wife was saying how much uh, uh, he liked her, and she said, no, he doesn't. Um, he's the way he's treated me. And she said, oh, that was just to get the performance he needed out of you. But that's just something he does. And it's like, there were performers who worked with Friedkin once and would never work with him again because of that behavior. And he got it from Fritz Lang, who treated Peter Lorre horribly in the making of M, one of the great films of all time. And Peter Lorre never worked with Fritz Lang again because he was treated so badly. So there is a history of this. This again, we were talking about toxic work environments in the room right before this, in Dawn's room, because the topic was quiet on set, which, by the way, if anyone hasn't seen the Max documentary, Quiet on Set, watch it. It's jaw-dropping, about the truth behind some of the stuff that happened at Nickelodeon shooting their children's TV shows. There were not one, not two, but three pedophiles who worked on set um, during those shows. And it's all kinds of stuff. Just, Quiet on Set, Max, watch it. They've done 4 episodes. The 5th one is April 7th. It's pretty jaw-dropping stuff. So yeah, it's excuse me, the treatment of actors, and the treatment of, I mean, the treatment of women writers, particularly in that series, it's can make make steam come out of your head. So it's a perpetual problem. It's hopefully one of the things that will improve over time in Hollywood. But anyway, I'll shut up.
Slow train. And back to Paul Newman, he did do an interview with a noose in the background once. Wasn't that with Barbara Walters? So, enough said there. Doesn't surprise me he was treating people badly on a set.
Well, Paul Newman was uh, also known in Hollywood as one of the nicest guys in the world.
With the noose in the background of
That
the
whole thing
interview.
was an act. but no, well, no, with the media, he was horrible to the media. But that whole thing was an act. But that he came up with between him and his agent. That was something that was a reputation that they wanted him to have, so he'd be written off as people would believe him as the heavies and what have you, and so that he would get these kind of roles and to keep himself in the newspapers. But every director, even
Wow.
Hitchcock,
That was the
said
poorest choice
he was
of an interview plan ever, if you ask me.
well. Yeah, no,
And
I didn't say he
he'll
was
go
a
down in
smart man.
history as a racist, so that was a good move.
What?
I didn't say he was a smart man, but but the whole thing was an act. But even Alfred Hitchcock, who the story is about, said that Paul Newman was probably the nicest actor that he ever worked with, but he did not mean that as a compliment. But anyway, um, do you want to do a once around high?
Wait a second. What do you mean he didn't mean it as a compliment? What did he mean it as?
He was trying to talk about his relationship with actors, and this was in the Truffaut series. He was talking about his relationship with actors, and this was before he'd made Torn Curtain with Paul Newman, but I forget what it was, but it was a very small part that Newman played in something else before he was famous, and he was talking about a famous actor like Paul Newman being one of the nicest people he knows, but that doesn't translate well on film, and that he really didn't give a crap how nice somebody like Jimmy Stewart was to puppies or the elderly, but that they hit their marks on time and gave him the expressions that he wanted for his film. So that was the context of that.
Bizarre. I guess Hitchcock likes to shock, and in every context. Um, I did want to just say we are talking earlier about movie houses. Uh, Sila has been running a number of movie series. It's just he's doing it in rooms with weird names that don't say movies in them. But Sila, if you ever opened a house that was specifically a movie house with the word movie in it and something that was easy to pronounce, um, you could do exactly the same thing you're doing now, but attract, probably attract a larger audience for them. But I've been very grateful for the Kurosawa series that you've been doing. It's been amazing. And for everyone in the room, tomorrow, Sila is doing Rashomon, one of Kurosawa's one of the greatest movies to ever come out of Japan, one of the greatest movies ever. So please feel encouraged to come to that. It's under a house called Musicus something. Um, but it's in Sila's profile. So if you go in there and look for Musicus, tap it, and if you don't belong to the house, join it and RSVP for Rashomon. It's at 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, and I expect it'll be a great discussion. Eric is very knowledgeable about the film, if nothing else. And but Sila, does uh, a number of film rooms as well. He just, for some reason, like hides them on a marketing level. But Sila is a great resource for film discussions as well.
Well,
Go ahead, Sheila. What's the name?
thank you for that first. The explanation for my hidden titles is that I work more with concepts and not so with other things. And the other explanation for not calling it cinema is because these rooms are always based on birthdays. I have a long list. I've been building up for that 20 years, a list of people who I think have delivered a lot in their lives, and we should celebrate them. And those are rooms where I address different concepts and also use them to celebrate those individuals. And Kurosawa and Oshima and a few others happen to be people I want to celebrate. But I do not see myself at all as a knowledgeable person in cinema, so I will not make a cinema house because I don't know enough about it. But in the realm of celebrating the work, of a person, that's why I use them in other spaces. But thank you.
Well, I mean, it's up to you. I know that you, me, and Eric have had wonderful discussions about the previous Kurosawa films. Uh, Akiru was an eye opener because I hadn't seen that, and I'm so grateful you picked that because it's one of my favorite films now. Just amazing. So I I think that you can. I mean, as an artist, and I tell my clients this: you can do something for yourself, or you can do something for your audience. And my feeling is, you know, do it for the audience, but it's a personal decision. So if you want to do something that pleases you, that's going to not attract other people, it's your choice. It's not the way I think, but it's a personal decision.
Correct.
Okay.
Are we ready for a once around there, Hi?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric. Please give us your final thoughts.
Uh, Thank you again for picking this film, Hi. It's not one I would have picked it, but a wonderful room that we had on it, and it was wonderful seeing it again. Uh, I do urge people. I wasn't able to participate because of a clubhouse glitch to go back and listen to our A Man for All Seasons room, which Yazzie ran in my absence, because of course that was also written by Robert Bolt, and my little bit about Bolt and existentialism is really put much better by Yazzie in that room, and Sila and the other people who were participating. And I do think that these two films are great companion pieces about 1960s cinema, and really I think Robert Bolt was able to sum up so many of the things that we talk about so often in this room. The influence of existential philosophy, the influence of the theater of the cruel and the absurd, the influence of the French New Wave, and all of the things that we discuss time and time again are really summed up by the screenplays that Bolt was working on in the 1960s. But that's on replay in our UK cinema history room, and I do urge people who were fascinated by this film and maybe haven't seen A Man for All Seasons to go out and see that as well, to kind of get a better idea of what Bolt does with characters, and how he can take somebody like a Thomas More and turn him into a Yuri Zhivago in a way, and how he can take a Yuri Zhivago from the novel and turn him into an existential anti-hero the way he does here. And that is why this is a film that I was much more willing to talk about than Lawrence of Arabia, which, you know, probably a better film, but again, I just couldn't talk about camels for 2 hours the way I could talk about existentialism, women on film, revolution, the artist as as perhaps not being the greatest of human being, but still being able to create great art. These are subjects that would not have come up in Lawrence of Arabia, and I think this was a much richer choice, and I thank High for it. And then I'm going to come back before we go and just talk about our scheduling for the next few weeks.
Yeah, because one of the films you just added was another David Lean film, correct?
Yes, correct. This Happy Breed, which is when he was working with Noel Coward, which we're this 80th anniversary of D-Day is this year in June, and so we're going to spend May doing the films that Britain was watching in 1944. And so I've got the 3 films, and then of course we have a tradition where we leave the last slot open every month so that if somebody comes up with a suggestion for a film or something comes up in conversation, we can slot it in there. And then we're going to begin June with, I haven't quite decided, but a film about World War II. I'm leaning towards A Bridge Too Far right now, but I'm going to rewatch it first because it's been a while since I've seen it, and before I inflict it on you all, I'm going to make sure that it's something I can recommend.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Sila, final thoughts, and also for everyone, if you have suggestions you want to make for Eric, please include that. For a film we should cover, please include that in your final thoughts. Sila, please go ahead.
Well, just a big thank you to Hai and Eric, also Kathy and Ruby, Adam, and everybody in the audience for being here. It's wonderful to have conversations, but it's a little bit nicer if some people are just listening and participating through listening. I Even though I said I don't see it as a great film, which is kind of a silly statement. It's not. I don't really need to say that, but I enjoyed the film. I think there are many aspects about it that I'm very glad to have watched it. Very well done, very good acting, interesting story, interesting dive into another culture, which I also invite anytime possible. And another film that I think I wouldn't have seen unless somebody says you have to watch this film. So I'm very glad about that. In terms of the programming, as Hai said, Rashomon tomorrow at 5, and today at 9 Eastern time we conclude 8 weeks of piano music because this is considered the International Piano Day. So I've been playing different rooms, focusing mostly on classical music by the piano. And because Liszt is a very important person in the realm of piano playing, because he was the one who actually came up with the idea of using a piano for recital. Until then, recital was only used in other contexts. So we are doing music from Franz Liszt. So that's what's happening tonight and Rashomon tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sila. And speaking of piano playing, Lorianne, a great pleasure having you in the room today. It's always wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here today. Wendy, wonderful to see you. Based on the ticket, looks like this is your first time here. Please feel encouraged to join the room and to, join the house and to come by whenever a movie interests you. And if you ever want to participate, obviously that would be super awesome. And Cohen, thank you also for joining us today. Really appreciate everyone who is in the room. Lori, you joined the stage. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for giving me a minute. I just wanted to share how much I enjoyed the conversation today. Just fabulous. I had to make lunch. I'm having a very busy day, and it was just what my mind needed is very intelligent conversation about art. So I appreciated that. And and thank you for bringing to the room's attention that I'm a pianist. And I wanted to mention to Sila that I'm releasing my 8th solo piano album in June. And if you ever want to do something on Clubhouse to share that or look at that, or I only know a little bit, just what you just mentioned, that you have a piano interest. So I thought I would mention that and see where it goes. And thank you for having me on stage and giving me a minute. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to give it a try, Sila. Musicus organicus?
Yes,
Did I get it right
it's
this time?
Latin.
That's the house.
Just read what you see. Musicus organicus.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is the house,
Yeah, that's the house.
Lorianne.
Got it.
And,
Thank you. Yeah, I saw it in your profile.
yeah, it's in his profile. He does. Sila does movie rooms, but he also does a bunch of music rooms, and absolutely, you two should get to know each other. And for anyone who doesn't know, Lorianne is a brilliant pianist, and she has her own house. She does live piano music on Clubhouse, and she's also one of the sweetest, most wonderful people on Clubhouse. So get to know Lorianne. And with that, Adam. Oh, by the way, Lorianne, thank you so much for being here, especially since today is Piano Day. So that must be like Christmas for you. So I especially appreciate you spending this special day with us. Adam, would love to get your final thoughts.
No real final thoughts, but thank you for the room. It's been very enriching, engrossing talk, and I was glad to be witness to it. And yeah, I can't wait to listen to the replays of those other two rooms, catch up on some of the other ones as well.
Thank you, Adam. And again, so much congratulations and joy about your new baby. And especially appreciate you spending some time with us when you've got a new baby. And thank you for sharing your baby's photo with us. We appreciate how adorable your new addition to the family is. Kathy, would love to get your final thoughts.
Oh, thank you. Eric and Hai, you make a fantastic double act. You have the clashes, you have the differences, but you're unified by your love and insight of cinema, and that is fantastic for plebs like myself. Lorianne, I have followed you. If there's anything I could do in my life, it would be play piano. I would cut my right arm off to play piano, even though I realise that that would put me at a disadvantage.
Oh, the irony.
There we go. It's a great room. It's a great room. So many great things, even in the chat and stuff, and people that can't come up. I love the fact that you guys are open to talking about different genres and all the silly things. It's just been a really nice. I have. I have some cravings lately, and this has been a fantastic distraction. So I thank you all for that. I have some addiction problems, and even though I'm 4 months clean, they pop up. Some of the rooms on Clubhouse help, some don't. This has been lovely. Thank you so much for a movie that has been a part of my childhood and a part of my relationship with my mum. And if we're going British next time, any of the later movies of Richard Burton, The Medusa Effect, when he's clearly just paying for his divorces, are fantastic. I will leave it at that and land my plane. And thank you all again so much. I love Rashomon. That's on my movie watch list at the moment. So, Sila, I might be chatting to you tomorrow.
Kathy, by the way, there have been composers that composed for one hand, and other composers have transposed for one hand. So if you feel compelled to do that, you could still play the piano.
You don't get
Even
this
more
everywhere.
ironic.
You don't get this everywhere, Sila. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
I only knew that
Thank you for
because of
all
that
that.
episode of MASH where Charles Winchester imports all those one-handed symphonies for the pianist whose hand he had to cut off in the Korean War. So
No, but it is a fact. The famous philosopher Wittgenstein, his brother lost an arm in the war, and he had people compose for him.
So he wasn't just a beery Schwein who was just a Schloss Schlegel, and Monty Python has yet again steered me wrong. Are we ready for our scheduling notes?
I just wanted to thank Kathy again. You and Lorianne and Ruby glam up the stage, and we're very grateful for having you on stage anytime. And also, especially for a film like this, which is, you know, one of the great romance films. I think it's really important to not just have a bunch of guys talk about it. So we're very grateful from that perspective as well. Um, so yeah, Eric, please go ahead with your eager to hear what you have planned.
Oh, and I also wanted to say, Kathy, we're very, very proud of you for your sobriety, and we wish you the continued success in the world. We all know you can do it. We're all pulling for you. Okay, so next week we are doing Our Man in Havana, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Directed by Carol Reed and written by Graham Greene. The genesis of this idea came from when I suggested this film. I was thinking of what are some other great writer-director duos like Bolt and Lean, and I of course stumbled on of Carol Reed, and Graham Greene was probably the best of them all. But I did not feel like we needed yet another room about the third man. If you want a good room about the third man, there's an excellent one over at Understanding Movies, but I'm kind of third maned out, so I thought let's do something. Hey, Alec Guinness was in one of their films, and he's in this film, Our Man in Havana. It is available on YouTube. It is also available for a fee on your regular streaming services such as Amazon, but for free, the only place I've seen it is YouTube. It is, however, an excellent print, both sound wise and visual wise, 720p, so you can watch it on your television. So yes, so join us for Our Man in Havana, and then we're going to have back-to-back episodes hosted by a good friend of the room, Sila Blume, who is going to take us through Sleuth, starring Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. And then we're going to do The Elephant Man, directed by uh, uh,
Lynch.
Mr. Yes, yes,
David Lynch.
David Lynch. Oh, sorry. God, I always do that on Clubhouse, don't I? Yeah, which is going to be very, very interesting because, of course, that is something that I thought would be nice back to back with Sleuth, because we have the American director coming to England to make a film. and The Outsider's Eye. So I thought that would be a very, very good back to back. And Sila is going to be able to take us through those two films, which I mentioned this before, but due to some glitches on Clubhouse back for A Man for All Seasons, I wasn't able to actually attend that room, one of my favorite films of all time. And yet Yazzie and Sila were able to hold down the fort and perhaps even produce a better room than if I had been there. And so that's why I have 100% trust that Sila is going to be able to take us through those two films. That, and of course, my experience with him in his own room. So looking forward to that. And then, as I mentioned, in May, we're going to go into the films of 1944 to lead us to the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And we're going to start that out with our second film from the Archers, Powell and Pressburger, A Canterbury Tale. We're then going to move into Laurence Olivier's adaptation of Henry V by William Shakespeare, and we're going to end it with This Happy Breed, directed by the same director as today's film, David Lean. Just kind of put us into the mindset of the home front, what they were watching in 1944 as in England as the troops were getting ready to invade Normandy. So 80th anniversary there. Kathy, I take your disapproval as a badge of honor.
Went the Day Well is a great British World War II movie. Went the Day Well.
It is a great. I don't know if it was 1944, but yes, it might. I'm going to rewatch that one. Other than that, hi, as the host, I'll let you close the room.
Eric, if you're returning to the Archers, are you eyeing the red shoes?
We're going to do all of the Archers. They're my favorite duo ever, and the Red Shoes, of course, will be among them. But of course, again, not 1944, so it didn't fit into this theme. But no, this theme is to commemorate D-Day. But yes, we will definitely be doing the Red Shoes. We will also be doing I Know Where I'm Going, Black Narcissus, Stairway to Heaven. Yes. Pretty much anything except that weird kids film they made in Australia will eventually get covered that involves Powell and Pressburger.
Good to know. Thank you for that information. I will look forward to that and might watch some of those in advance. So again, Eric, thank you so much for creating this wonderful house and for doing this room, which is every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And thank you for planning out rooms in advance so that we can have a time to watch them at our convenience. And Sila, Adam, Kathy, Lori Ann, thank you so much for coming on stage and participating. Cone, thank you for being in the audience. Thank you to everyone else who was here. Ruby, Wendy. We appreciate every single person in the room. And thank you to folks listening through the replays. We're grateful. And again, grateful to Eric for hosting this and for being so incredibly, unbelievably knowledgeable about film. Always jaw dropping what you know about a film we're doing. So um, a great pleasure and privilege to be able to do film discussions with all you guys. And with that, I'm going to close the room. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Want to join the conversation? Every Thursday, we record on the Clubhouse app. Just follow the link in the episode description, and you can be a part of our panel.